Welcome to Can Angels Fly Tarot. I'm Nancy, and I'm here to perform my monthly Aquarius rant. And this Aquarius rant, rambling rant, has to do with Aquarius relative to humanity overall, as Aquarius does represent humanity overall. And it has to do with doomsday prepping. Now, if you follow me, you know that when I do my Aquarius rambling rant, I don't have any true order to the rant. I just have concerns, and so I share. And so today I'm sharing on the subject matter of doomsday prepping and answering the question about what it is and why is it so? Why is doomsday prepping so popular? Well, let me start with my understanding of what it means to do doomsday prepping. Doomsday prepping is a premeditated and a rational move to offset or withstand the anticipated pole shift. So the question emerges, what is a pole shift? Wikipedia defines a pole shift as a theory that suggests that there have been geologically rapid shifts in the relative position of the modern day geography, locations of the poles, and the axis of rotation of the earth, creating calamities such as floods and tectonic events. Wikipedia. Now, at this point in time, I guess before I move on, let me talk about a little bit about Wikipedia's definition or description of a pole shift. It indirectly suggests that these geographic locations of the poles and the axis of rotation of the earth are changing naturally on their own, therefore creating an inevitable calamities such as floods and the shifting of the various tectonic plates, causing other natural disasters. But I personally don't believe that's 100% true. I have to remind you here, this is an Aquarius rambling rant, and therefore there's no order, just sharing. And I guess I should give you a disclaimer here that this is what may be categorized as fear porn, another label used here on YouTube, fear porn. But it is what is fear porn, and doomsday prepping is good to go for the month of October, as October is directly related to Halloween, and Halloween is directly related to fear and terror and horror. So if you are you have a weak constitution, if you are get afraid easy, or prone to suffer any psychological breaks, don't watch this. Don't watch this video. I'll catch you next time. So back to doomsday prepping, and it being a premeditated and rational move to offset or withstand something that is anticipated is absolutely true. Absolutely true. And I wrote that definition. I created that description of what doomsday prepping is and what it's for. But I don't agree with the pole shifts as just a natural occurrence. Not fully. I do believe that pole shifting does take place naturally, but I believe it's over millions of years. The process is so slow and gradual to we could, if we were just living in sync with this earth, that we could withstand the changes because they're just that slow. However, mankind has, what's the word? Violated Earth. And what do I mean by man has violated Earth? Well, we know that man has been in pursuit of knowledge for as long as they have existed, as long as man has existed. And man has been very explorative, I think is a word. They've gone on many expeditions, they've explored and have learned what? Much about this earth, everything from the natural resources, the natural resources and how they interact with each other in order to create a third element. Man has learned how to use those various elements to extend life and make life easier, etc., etc. But we never just stopped there. We never stopped there. And I'll try to explain it a little clearer. Going back and talking about how man has just really been explorers and researchers and creators themselves using the substances of this earth. What am I saying? I'm saying that we drilled, we excavated all of the various natural resources of this earth, in this earth. And every time we drilled and extracted the various minerals and metals and crystals and oil from the interior of the earth, it left caverns. Even if during some of those expeditions, we filled those gaps with alternative substances, we still left that particular space vulnerable and not in its natural state. Now, the effects of the removal of subterranean natural resources like gold and crystals and things like that left a void in the earth. And we didn't take just a little bit, no. We took the majority. And because of that excavation, the earth has had to shift in order to resettle itself. I don't think this is something that we think about often, especially basic everyday men and women that have basic mediocre jobs. But for those that have been in more scientific or archaeological or excavating, oil drilling, and those type of fields, big paying fields, they are aware, they always were aware that the removal of these subterranean resources was going to leave the areas that they excavated vulnerable. Now, I don't know the first time that major, extensive drilling and excavation took place, but I'll just, take a guess that it's been probably nearly 100 years. Just hypothetically, 100 years of mining this earth for all of its natural resources. Now I'm just going to name a few natural resources that we know have been removed from the subterranean caverns, including things you wouldn't even think of. Example, as mentioned, gold has been consistently harvested. Quartz, all of these things are used in our various forms of technology. And then there are things like sand, S-A-N-D, sand. I believe sand is used to make glass. I believe sand is also used in mixing concrete, different things like that. And you think about all of the sidewalks we have and streets we have and buildings we have and how many glasses we have. That's a lot of sand that has been removed from various shores. Gold is used in teeth and various, again, technologies like televisions for circuitry and things like that. Quartz, same thing for watches and things. So this is just a few of the things that I can think of that those particular minerals and various elements are used for. But I know that there are many more uses for just those few substances. Another substance I can think of is oil. We use oil in everything. Cars, machinery, And then there's coal, various forms of coal, for everything from the barbecue coals to, I don't know. But we know that coal is used in a lot of different ways. And then there's also, it was something else I was thinking of that is frequent, that we frequently use salt, digging into the salt mines. The salt we lay out in the road when the weather gets bad. Salt that we consume. We know we use salt in so many ways. Now, these are just a few. I mean, literally a few, probably out of uh, thousands of minerals or resources that the earth yielded over millions of years. What am I saying? I'm saying that it took this earth millions of years to create the large deposits of every single substance that is present in this physical world. And man, with his curious nature and ambitious nature, has mined every single substance that they could find, that they did find, and put it to alternative use. Now, I personally believe that whomever the creator is, put all of the resources here for us to use for the purpose that we use them. However, there still was supposed to be restraint used. Only take what you need, but that's not what we did. We can go into any hardware store now, any grocery store, any clothing store, and see after surplus. Many of us in our own private homes have a surplus. The doomsday preppers have surplus. The jewelry stores have surplus. What am I saying? I'm saying if you walk into a jewelry store, any one of many jewelry stores in your location, you may find various stones, gold, silver, metals. All of those metals and stones were harvested, excavated, drilled out of the earth, not to be used for life-sustaining issues or concerns, but for glamour. Now, I couldn't possibly even guess how many jewelry stores there are worldwide. It's impossible, for me at least. But if you just think about the jewelry in the showcases all over the world, about all the jewelry that's in the possession of private owners and in their jewelry boxes. And then the jewelry, the stones and the metals that are actually being used to help us sustain life. That's an awful lot of materials or natural resources that, as a direct result, have left a gap somewhere in this earth. As mentioned before, I talked about the use of sand and all of the buildings, the concrete buildings all over this world, all of the sidewalks and porches, and I mean, what's made out of concrete? A flower pot. Well, although the buildings may be occupied, and so they're helping in one way or another enhance life. But what about all of, let's say you go into a hardware store or a hardware store, or what do you call it, like a Home Depot, or a floral place like Michael's or something like that, and all the plants, the terracotta planters just sitting there. I couldn't possibly guess how many hardware stores there are all over the world, or places that are similar, that have stacks and stacks and stacks of pots, or stacks and stacks and stacks of stairs, or even sand creates glass, I think, or how all the glasses or glass that all the sand that has been changed or transformed into glass all over this world. Whatever the account is, it is a subtraction from its original space. A beach, a shore, a seabed, leaving what? A gap and a void. I mean, how can I even do this justice without a full list of all the natural resources that humanity has used and overused, even misused? As mentioned, I do believe I mentioned it, common men and women may not be aware of the residual effects of over excavating the natural resources. But those that had the various jobs in that field, or those type of fields of work, were aware. They were aware. And so I personally believe that these people that were in various fields, one way or another, associated with such drastic and extreme harvesting, understood that it was no way that they could fill all of the voids that they were creating as they over harvested these natural resources. So what is happening now is that these big earners are pulling their life savings, their 401ks, their retirement funds, and they're creating these, they're prepping, doomsday prepping. And so what they're doing is they're creating these fallout bunkers, primarily underground, if they can afford them. Many of them can. They also are stocking up food with long shelf lives. They are stocking up artillery and ammunition, or any form of weapons that they can. They are personally having water reserves or digging wells and things like that, anticipating the resettling of the earth. Now, as mentioned, I personally do believe that this earth would have, and has had, and will continue to have, pole shifts. But I also believe that they happen very, very slowly over millions of years. But due to mankind's extreme excavation of all the natural resources, it has led to a quickening of the poles shifting. And the poles are shifting as the result of the earth having to resettle herself, refocus herself, fill in those gaps and voids and barren caverns that man has inflicted her with. As mentioned, this is an Aquarius rambling rant. There is no order to this, but I am attempting to go somewhere with this. This is an Aquarius rambling rant because Aquarius is synonymous with humanity. And so, humanity, what is the rest of humanity to do? The common men and women that didn't earn substantial salaries. The rest of humanity, you know, common men and women that worked mediocre jobs. Yes, the common men and women did benefit from what was harvested. We did. But we did not, how can I say it? The rapid and extreme harvesting that was done by a particular set of people was to help make them rich. So they continued to do it. It continued to perpetuate it. And the reality is and was and will always be that every individual only needs a small portion. They only need a portion. And so, how can I say this? It almost seems like, let me see how I can say this, that this specific grouping of people, and it's not a small grouping of people, I'm just trying to summarize it for this rambling rant, had all along their best interests, their well-being at heart, and they still do. Because what they're trying to do, many people, science, is create a theory that suggests that the earth is going through a pole shift naturally. They also, Doomsday Prepper is also trying to throw people off when they talk about like a civil war. A whole nother video, possibility. And to some preppers, some, you know, the ones that copycat preppers that just fall in line. They may invest their savings and money in order to prep, you know, doomsday prep, believing that's the primary reason. But the truth of the matter is, it is not the primary reason that the original doomsday preppers are prepping. That's not why. The original doomsday preppers are prepping, including all government agencies with the subterranean fallout shelters, with food storage, long-term food storage, artillery, etc., etc. Because they know that they have exhausted the earth, pushed her to her limits, and now she has to respond. Now she has to resettle. That's science. It is natural science. And remember, this is another thing. I want to say this called the Georgia Guidestones or something like that. I'm not sure. Where it talks about keeping humanity under a particular amount, that there should only be a maximum amount of people on the face of the earth at any given time. All of that is lining up or lines up with this, with the earth having to recalibrate herself quickly as the result of man's works and deeds. Humanity is left to deal with the wrath of the earth. I'm sure you're getting me by now, but just in case you're not, that the doomsday preppers are hiding away for the phase that the earth goes through in order to recalibrate herself. Many will die as a result of the abuse to the earth. Now, what I wanted to talk about or bring up are the various natural disasters, so that you can see what is really taking place. Now, I do have a few videos here already on my YouTube channel where I talk about the various natural anomalies I've experienced. One is called Why the Birds Are Dropping Dead Out of the Sky, and the other is where I talk about why the ship or the trains topple over. I also have one that talks about the heat is not natural, we're being microwaved. I ask you to locate those videos and to watch them. I think I'm going to create a playlist just for the month of October that is about the shifts that are taking place as far as the earth. So, when will this shift happen? Well, I'm actually, at this point in time, I've been working on another fear porn based video, the outline, trying to work on the outline. And I stopped to make this video because the subject matters are running very, very close to, they were starting to bleed in together, but not seamlessly. And in my studies, I realized that, how can I say this? Where is it at? I just want to point this out. It's biblical based. This is an Aquarius rambling rant. I can talk about anything in any order. And if you just ride the wave with me, I am going somewhere with this. So let me see if I can find this part. Biblically based. Oh, I was reading. And it's Matthew's 24:19 through 24, I think. 22. And it says, and I'm just reading this because Matthew's 24:19 through 22 offers us some clues to when some major shifts are going to take place on this physical earth. Now, I don't read the Bible in a way trying to convert anybody religiously. It's not about religion here. What I've realized in my time of studies, the years of studies, is the Bible is some type of blueprint that was written by, I do believe, the elitist. That's why it's King James Version. He probably was commissioned to see this blueprint written out the way they wanted it written out. And so in this part of the Bible, the Matthew's chapter 24, verses 19 through 22, offers clues to when there is going to be something apocalyptic or possibly catastrophic that happens on this earth. And again, it's like rambling rant. When I was in the church, I was told that it was evil to, read astrology and there just dive off into any form of divination, magic, playing cards, all kinds of stuff. And it was fear. Fear was invoked in order to keep the people, originally. It was that fear was imposed to keep the people from looking. And generation after generation, people held that fear mongering spirit, and handed it down to the detriment of the people, especially the churchgoers. And so, what am I saying? I'm saying that many of us that were in the churches failed to really learn or to come to understand, because we were too afraid to look where we were being pointed to. And so I'm going to stop and I'm going to read these scriptures. Again, I'm not trying to convert anyone. What I am trying to do is show you or reveal to you clues that lie within many people's biblical texts. And so I read, how miserable those days will be for pregnant and nursing mothers. Pray that your flight will not occur in the winter or on the Sabbath. For at that time there will be great tribulation, unmatched from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be seen again. It's as if those days had not been cut short, nobody would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. And then I want to jump down to verse 29 of chapter 24. And it says, immediately after the distress of those days, the sun will be darkened. What does that mean, really? Well, I'm going to come back to that. And the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. Now, there are clues that lie just in these few verses. One clue I just want to point out for this Aquarius rambling rant is verse 20 of Matthew's chapter 24, when it says, it's a clue here. It says, pray that your flight will not occur in the winter or on the Sabbath. Okay. Now, one clue that stands out that we never looked deeper because we thought we knew what it meant is Sabbath. But if you break down this word Sabbath, it lets us know, clue number one, that Sabbath being broken down, the word, rather than, like the Sunday or the seventh day. No. It's saying during an undefined year on a Thursday, during a period of rest, there occurs a shift transition into the cleansing process. I repeat, breaking down the word Sabbath because it is a clue. It says, during an undefined year, on a Thursday, during a period of rest, there occurs a shift, transition into the cleansing process. That's deep. That's one clue that's offered in the scripture. Again, it's not about trying to convert anyone, but it's looking at the clues that have been readily available to us that we have been overlooking due to being afraid, due to being told it is wrong. Now that I've said that it's wrong, I want to go talk about what was wrong. Divination, astrology. So I want to go to the other verse where I said I would come back to it, and it's that verse 29 of what Matthew's chapter 24:29 says. It says, immediately after the distress of those days. Now, right now, I'm going to stop. What I'm about to read now is similar to what I read, I'm going to say 20, I lost track, 20-something years ago, when I was in a church, and I realized that the church was not teaching what the Bible was really saying. And I began to really search, and that's when I began to see. And it broke that enchantment the church had on me. That was one of the things. Okay, let me go back. Because this verse that I'm going to read, 29, out of Matthew's chapter 24, is also a clue about the time period in which this pole shift most likely will be taking place. And I'm just going to try to give you an example of how to interpret such texts as this. I read, immediately after the distress of those days. I'm going to stop. Immediately after the distress of those days, the sun will be darkened. Now, the sun will be darkened. Astrologically, what does that tell us? Looking through the filter of astrology. In order for the sun to be darkened, only one or two things that I know could happen. The third one, we really don't want to happen. And so I'll mention the third one because we really don't want that to happen. That will be the actual extinguishing or burning out of the sun, which means most likely life wouldn't exist here on the earth. So we can scrap that one. The next one would be a true overcast that would not allow the sun to shine through. Possibility. But the third is lunar eclipse. A solar eclipse. A solar eclipse would have to happen for the sun to be darkened. Solar eclipse. Let me write that down here. I need to look up. I'm about to spill the beans. Okay, reading on. Let me try it again. Immediately after the distress of those days, the sun will be darkened. We suggest a solar eclipse. And the moon will not give its light, lunar eclipse. Or not so much lunar eclipse, it's a void. Oh yeah, the void of the course of the moon. The moon going through the phase in which it's void. We're looking at clues for events to occur that were written in by the elite to let common laymen and women know what was taking place, what was scheduled to take place, and why. But we were too afraid to look to where we were being what where we were being pointed to. Anywho, it reads, and the moon will not give its light. The moon not giving its light, looking through an astrological filter, possibly could be the void of the course moon. And then it also says the stars will fall from the sky. Looking through an astrological lens, what could that mean? It can mean a meteor shower. And it says, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. Now that's a question mark. I'm trying to figure that out. But let me take you back across this, through this particular verse to try to reveal to you how to decode what is written in such text as this. As mentioned, the sun will be darkened. Therefore, that suggests a solar eclipse. It says, and the moon will not give its light at the same time, or sequentially, at the same time during the same cycle, most likely lunar cycle, is that there will be a solar eclipse that happens. Now, this is all the research you have to do. The question arises, look at the projected solar eclipses to happen, one. And it also, at the same time, during the same cycle, a moon that is void, of course, looking for the same dates or very near dates. And also, it's a time period in which the stars will fall from the sky, which is an asteroid shower. Now, I go back up into the previous verse, which was the verse 20, where it says, pray, your flight is not in the winter, nor on the Sabbath. I had to go back there because, number one, there's two clues there. The Sabbath and winter. So, as suggested, there are those questions. When at the same time, during the same period, when is there a solar eclipse? When is there an asteroid shower? When is there a moon in its void course? And then look to see if it's during the winter months. Okay, once you see that those three things happen in a particular winter month, same season, right? Then you go to the Sabbath, breaking down the word Sabbath. I did say it. That it is on a Thursday. So that's another clue. And when I was studying the word Sabbath, it has a lot more to do with, it's deeper. It goes deeper because it has this significance or this connotation where there is some, basically, I'll say there's some divine power that was holding back the cleansing process. However, due to sabotage, it quickens or releases the cleansing process. As mentioned, the earth does go through a regenerative cleansing process, but it's very, very, very slow. Much of it happens over hundreds of thousands, even millions of years, if it moves at its natural pace. And it moves at its natural pace, slow, when it is renewing itself gradually, restoring used resources. in small amounts. Now, I do believe that small amounts were all we needed, humanity, overall, to allow us to live comfortably in this physical world while we dealt with our whatever spiritually karmic issues that we needed to deal with. I think we could have used them, and we could have used them abundantly, and still not have disturbed the earth to the point that she would have had to go into a like violent frenzy in order to again renew herself and to resettle herself, to recalibrate herself. But due to the sabotage that has happened because of man's extreme ways and works and deeds of gutting her out, her natural resources, that has quickened her reflexes. All that she's going to go through is her reflex. And so it has brought on the works and deeds of man, all the harvesting and doing what man has done, has brought on these natural disasters that we are seeing. And that's why these natural disasters are increasing, because man still hasn't stopped drilling and mining and excavating. We haven't stopped, you know. It still is money to be made and power to be had. And so the people that are into that field of work just keeps on going. And they say we need more and more and more and more. No. They are aware with such advanced minds that they've been hit a plateau that they should have stopped, and they didn't. So what their ultimate plan is to harvest as much as they can, to store the surplus away, to allow Earth to go through her recalibration, to kill off humanity that cannot hide away in a bunker, and to come out and to continue to move forward and have all the resources that they need for a prolonged time. But I'm not done yet. It's a little bit more. Now, I want to, before I go forward, I want to talk about, I don't want to forget, I was going somewhere, Aquarius rant. Anyway, so let's talk about the various natural disasters that are increasing in intensity and quantity. The water that is disappearing from the beaches. Where's the water going? Pay attention. There is water missing from certain parts of the world where it normally was there, you know, beaches and things like that. And then there's extreme flooding in parts of the world that have been dry for hundreds of years. Why? The earth is resettling herself and recalibrating. Therefore, the tectonic plates are moving. Tectonic plates moving and increase in earthquakes as what? The earth settles, fills in those caverns, and recalibrates herself. Then one of the first things that really started being obvious, started announcing himself, were these various pitfalls and trenches that were happening all over the world. Even here where I am in Detroit, the ground was just falling in. That's scary. People's houses and other locations falling in. Why? Again, all of the open caverns and gaps that were left after the drilling and excavation had to be filled in. Even if they put another substance in that place, that means wherever they took the supplemental substance from, that now had a gap. And even if they took a supplemental substance like sand and put it in a place where oil was, it was not indigenous to that space, nor conducive to what that area or that body of earth produced. So as a direct result, it's almost like the earth in some spots may have pushed or vomited the foreign body out and away. But we do know at least the earth shifts and recalibrates itself for the purpose of renewing itself. I want to say that here. Ultimately, what it's all about is Earth getting back to a place where she once again is in a stable enough position to begin to reproduce, to produce what? Gold, oil, crystals and quartz and whatever other natural resources there are. The earth is just like a tree. It's faithful. She's faithful. Just like the tree springs up in the spring and has no problem withering in the winter, only to spring up again in the spring. The earth continues to produce its fruits, its natural resources. And so her ultimate goal is to get recalibrated or get calibrated in a way that allows her to continue to do what? Faithfully produce what? Those natural resources. Example, crystals and quartz and gold and pearls and, whatever else she creates, coal, salt. That's what she does. And how can I say, I know that coal and coal and diamonds go together. But it's this extensive pressure that exists to make, the coals and then a diamond itself. And so when those caverns are dug out, that pressure that exists in that area of the earth no longer exists. But it doesn't mean that that area of earth was not ordained or ordered to do that particular production. And so that particular area of the earth is naturally going to, again, recalibrate itself so it could get back to work. But the caverns are so large, there are such big voids. So she, Earth, has a deep, intense recalibration to perform and it's in so many different places and spaces all over her that it is anticipated that in the next few years that she will be increasingly settling or recalibrating. Anywho, landslides also a result of the various trenches and pits and voids that are left and the displacement of natural resources, tectonic plates and earthquakes, same thing. And then the tornadoes. There is going to be a change. There is a change that is taking place in our atmosphere. And as a result of the change in our atmosphere relative to the land mass itself it's going, and oh, the chemicals as well, are creating increased tornadoes, as well as, oh Lord, volcanoes. This is Aquarius rant. I don't forget to plug up. Oh, I forgot to plug up the laptop. Hey, apologies. And so, volcanoes. Then, like, it's something else that has been a big conversation piece, and that's the Yellowstone geyser, Old Faithful, like that, where it was timed when the geyser would go off. Excuse me, and how the geyser is no longer faithful, and why is that? It is a direct result of the works and deeds of man throwing off Earth's biological clock. See, that geyser was symbolic of the woman's biological clock. It's thrown off. Then there is the extreme heat and global warming due to what? Man's works and deeds, and how they are pushing various instruments and agents into the atmosphere, and tsunamis, again, as the various landslides happen, and they affect or displace the waters. Every time it's displacing the water. But there are other things that are going on as well. Humans have successfully had some successes relative to technology, major successes. And one of them that I attempted to shed light on, and I think it was 2006 when I made the video, I think I mentioned it earlier, is like, this heat is not natural. You're being microwaved. Again, you can locate that video. But it has to do with the sun. And I don't believe that scientists, I'll say, actually could reach the sun itself, not the natural sun. But I do believe that we, man, have achieved the capability of injecting instruments such as satellites, et cetera, into our what do they call it? Like the stratosphere or something like that, into the orbit, our orbit. And one of the things that I was making known in that particular video is that there is an instrument that has been injected into our orbit, and it orbits in front of and at the same progressive rate as the sun, so you don't see it clearly. And what it is called, now that people are up on it, but they're just looking at it from what I can see, as an instrument that's here on the ground, or on ships. I saw a video about it where it's on ships, but no, I live this. And it's called an active denial system. It is a non-lethal weapon, they say. And so what is an active denial system, which is a non-lethal weapon? It is what I call a heat ray machine, where heat can be concentrated on a target. And this system is, again, in orbit and moving at the same rate as our sun. Therefore, people aren't paying attention. I lived it. I experienced it, and I talk about my experience relative to that particular instrument, or non-lethal weapon in that video. And I share how I lost a partial sight in my right eye due to it. How I knew what it was when I experienced it. I could tell what it was just through what I was experiencing physically. And that was long before I I don't think anybody had ever heard of it prior to me talking about it. But, hey, people, they end up getting it. They figured it. They finally got it one way or another. And so I'm bringing that up because that ability to focus heat on a target has also allotted man. How can I say it? I'm not going to hold y'all a lot longer. But I want to talk about the ambitious human sense of entitlement or anxiety, wanting to just bring it on because they know what's going to go on. But when. It's like a woman who's expecting a baby. When. And a lot of women and their significant other want to try to walk the baby down, exercise the baby down, sex the baby down. They want it now, hurry up. And so what am I saying? I'm saying that I'm tired of that goddamn flapping flower and big fly be here all day. I can't catch it. That same anxiety or anticipation for the pole shifting exists amongst those that really know what's taking place or soon to take place. They wanted to hurry up. Why? Number one, they got their stuff in place. They feel like they're going to be safe and secure from the effects of this earth reselling herself. And number one, like for instance, that long-term food stuff is very, very expensive. I remember Costco's had it. I think it was like $3,000 or something for a family of 4 or something like that. It was something crazy. Either way, I'm one of them people that couldn't afford it. So, there's quite a few things that are going on. So, right now, I want to talk about how that particular machine or instrument that concentrates heat in a particular direction on a particular target has yet to be used against man openly, because I was a subject. I tell y'all here on YouTube, I've been a guinea pig for the various works of man and science against my will. And so I'm a black sheep and what else they call it, a enemy of a, I am. I've lived this thing. But, and I'm not saying I don't know if they can get that pinpoint concentrated, but I know I was affected. I don't understand why others weren't affected or others couldn't look up and see the same thing I saw. I suggested it here on YouTube. Use your phone so you can see. Everybody made up all kind of excuses. People slow, but I'm gonna let that go. And talk about try to talk about what I'm talking about. But how that ability to concentrate heat is that's I guess that's a whole nother video I can go into about that. But like for instance, the I can say it. You know how they talking about how the the glaciers and various things are melting. It is my belief personally, based on my experiences, that the people that are over those particular devices are quickening again the earth process by edging her on, because they know that she's on the edge like a pregnant woman, edging her on, to go into renewal mode, and therefore is going to get rid of a lot of the population here on this earth. And these are things that we don't believe in, because all we know is how we've lived now. We don't look back at like the stories of Pompeii and Atlantis and the Mayans. We don't look at those things. And they let us know something. They let us know something. The extinction of the dinosaurs, all these extinction basically scenarios we don't acknowledge. But we are really, really facing an extinction level event, and it is being bought on and perpetuated by people, will say, in power. And that particular instrument I was just talking about, I believe is being used to melt the glaciers, which is causing additional flooding. And so these are things that, unless you are looking, you can't see. It's unbelievable. We weren't bred and raised to think such things, to acknowledge these things. We turn our head fearfully away. I lived this. I don't know what you lived. I lived this. Another thing I want to talk about is how, what's going to happen first? What's going to happen first? Now, as I shared, I've been writing another horror story for the month of October. But what's going to happen first? See, I don't want to go into the other horror story. Which one is going to happen first? Right now, I really want to talk about the doomsday prepping and why it's happening. But I want to also talk about how this scenario to be, that will be, is not the only thing that we're dealing with. Not the only thing we're dealing with. So I said this is a fear porn based video. Fear mongering, however you call it. Yeah, this is what it is. So hopefully YouTube don't start nothing. So I should better say here, hypothetically, this is a possible case scenario. This is a video in line for Halloween, but it's a fear tactic. Wink, wink. Wink, wink. So anyway, I want to talk a little bit about the fires that have been taking place in California and other parts of the world. Why is it happening? Now, when I was in school, see, this is why I'm stopping, I'm rambling and ranting. When I was in school, I realized that I was being taught slowly, progressively. The more I proved myself academically, the more they would give me. If I realized that if I were to fail, and when I did fail, everything was slow up as far as the knowledge that was being granted to me. And I say that because one of the things, I received a lot of knowledge, very powerful knowledge, when I looked like I was on top of my game and I was going to be beneficial straight up to the system. And so I can refer back to what I learned from the professionals, from being in particular fields of study in the course of my academic career. And one of the things that I learned at some point in time, I don't even know what it was in agriculture, I don't know. Uh, I can't remember. But it was about burning the land, the ground, the earth, burning it. And back to that machine, that instrument, having the ability to focus heat and to magnify the temperature to whatever the desired temperature is or necessary to get the job done. In this case, it is to start wildfires. And the wildfires exist again, edging her on, Earth on. But it also has a dual nature to it. And the dual nature is to, when Earth finally is completely invoked to start her cleansing process as defined by the Sabbath, her cleansing process, her renewal process, her recalibration process. She, not she, yeah, as she goes through that process, it's not just going to be those that were able to prep, doomsday prep, that might survive. Of course, there are those are destined to survive that experience, that are just common men and women, however they do it, however divinely they do it, they make it through. So what I'm talking about, what I learned in school about burning the land. Part of, remember, the earth has been pushed to have to rejuvenate, renew, recalibrate herself. And that includes the topsoil too, because we did a lot of harsh work on the topsoil, everything from the harvesting, the yielding, the concrete, all those kind of things, contaminations, building and destruction of various buildings or things like that, and all the contaminants with the lead and all of that contaminated the ground. So the burning process, the reason why the burning is taking place now, the wildfires, is to get ahead of the earth, because she's not gone into full labor. I'll say the labor pains the Bible talk about, she hasn't gone into full labor pains. And so the people that are prepping are getting a jump start on renewal of the earth, because the first thing that they have an interest in restoring, once earth has completely settled herself and recalibrated herself, is the renewal of food, vegetation. But if the preppers have to wait for her to earth to do her thing, then it's no guarantee that that particular part of the earth will be cleansed. How can I say it? When the earth is burned, it's a renewal process. It is a regenerative process. The fires purify the land of anything that is in it or on it. And it takes so many years for that land to replenish itself or renew itself in order to be able to do what? Yield a harvest, to be fruitful. And so all of the forest fires, all of the wildfires that have happened are happening trust and believe, in a strategic location and place, just for that purpose of having acres upon acres upon acres to plant the first harvests for the new world. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Another thing that is happening, and that is happening, is that this is another thing I learned, that historically, water only had to wash like through the rocks and sand within feet to be cleaned and purified. But due to man's works and deeds, it contaminated the water. You often hear me suggest that you go Google Earth and zoom in on any water body and see the fish skull and X, and read the text that accompanies that that fish skull and X, which talks about the waters are contaminated. And why is that? Why have these waters been contaminated? Number one, that upon Earth's recalibration, the waters will be purified again. So what am I saying? That the people that, how to say, initially, after or as, and immediately after Earth goes through a process, her renewal process, those that survive miraculously will come out with no food and vegetation, because the earth has been scorched for the purpose of getting rid of any vegetation, number one, and to prep the ground for future planting, getting a head start. A person won't be able to drink from the waters until the whole process, Earth's cleansing process, is complete. They won't be able to drink from the water without become poisoned. And so, what am I saying? I'm saying it is an intentional. This ain't stuff that I think, y'all. This is stuff that I know. That's what's so interesting, that I have to try to watch what I say because of possible punishment or sanctions by this particular platform. But I ask you to share this video, like it and subscribe. I know it's out of order. Again, it's the Aquarius Rambling Rant, and it is an Aquarius rant because it is talking about the future of humanity and where we are, or where we're going. And as mentioned, there are multiple things that are taking place, multiple things that are actually taking place, and you know, I'm gonna close this up in a minute, but I want to say something. It's disheartening. I'm really getting. I find myself being very irritated with the people that I encounter. Not all, not y'all, but them other folks. I'm irritated because I don't know how many of us got to be so stupid. I mean, just no common sense, period. I remember reading while doing my astrological studies that I don't know what condition it would be called, but it was saying how human beings get to a place where they cannot handle the truth. And because they can't handle the truth, they actually create a fantasy for themselves and make themselves believe the lie that they create or another creates for them, and are just uh, content with waiting for the inevitable to happen that they don't want to look at. And it irritates me because there are certain things that, I mean, it's crazy because where I am now, as far as my studies, is there was a time period when these things could have been stopped and slowed down, but people couldn't do it. They wouldn't do it for one reason or another. And so, since the majority of people in humanity weren't aware or wouldn't or couldn't look at the truth of the matter and what was happening, or were under illusion or deception, we have a particular path we have to go down now. That's deep. That's deep. Forced to go down it. You know, the children that are born now are forced to go down the pathway I just talked about. And I'm sure I'd have forgot something in all this rambling and ranting. But it's just disheartening to me because there are other things that we still can do something about. But we have to acknowledge them. The majority of us have to acknowledge it, the issues, and move on them. And those issues are what I'll probably be talking about in my upcoming real horror story, you know. I'm not being funny. This here physical worldly experience is a mother sucker. It is challenging. It's challenging. And I would like to be an active participant in trying to do better. It seems like I thought this for a very, very long time, that, you know, going back to biblical stories about fallen angels and hell and things like that, that we who humanity, people in humanity, we are the angels and we are the demons, and we have become, basically, it seems, very demonic, and we are literally, I can't see it no other way. I keep trying to see it. I really do. We are pulling ourselves down into hell. We are willingly creating hell. And it is and it says I keep, you know, I go back into the Bible now because now it's starting to make sense. It says, my people will die for a lack of knowledge. Now we can decode the Bible. Why now? Why we couldn't decode it 50 years ago? So that we would have had a real life chance. Now we're decoding it, literally decoding it. And on a large scale, as mentioned, 20 something years ago, I was decoding the Bible. And so I know it were people that were far more advanced than myself, but maybe no one was listening. People are, I guess, now starting to listen. But this is what it seems to be about at this point in time, at this stage, you know, in our timeline. It's like, okay, people of the world, the souls of this existence. Because obviously, its reincarnation does exist. So souls of this existence, learn this today, and you might be able to change, you know, tomorrow. Tomorrow being thousands of years or millenniums, you know. It's like we have to do it ourselves. We have to do what ourselves. We have to ascend out of hell, and I'm not trying to be religious at all. I'm not trying to convert nobody at all. It is not about religion. I know it's the text and the tone may sound religious, but it's not about religion. It is about who we are outside of our current existence, our current presentation, being in this physical bodies, who we are overall, who we are. Have you ever thought about who we are outside this body? Where were we before we came into these physical bodies? Where will we go after? Who are we? And where are we? We've learned to call this place Earth. We've learned to call this experience life. I've learned that I am Nancy in this experience at this particular time. But where was I prior to being here? Where will I go when I leave here? Who am I? Who are you? Who is any individual in humanity? That part. Who are we? Are we eternal beings that just slide in and out of reality or physicality over and over and over again? And it depends on what we do during a particular period in our timeline, continuous, unending timeline that projects what will be in the future when we return. Is it possible that the stories about Adam and Eve, God and the devil and heaven and hell is a story of us? That at times we've gotten it together and we weren't as selfish or greedy or narcissistic or disorderly. And so we projected for ourselves into a future, a heavenly state. And we hear the story of the Garden of Eden, paradise. And then there were times that we came into physicality and we became greedy and lascivious and lost in physicality and passion, and therefore projecting for ourselves experience of hell, like hell, a hell-like experience. And it just goes on and on and on and on. Who are we? If that scenario that I just gave is the case, man, how can I not come back again? Because I don't want to come back into the next projection. Because the next projection, I mean, it could be that the people that were in power, that came to understand, at least on a physical level, that there's going to be this major shift, a depopulation, a renewal of depopulation, or renewal of the earth. They say we'll save, so who can be saved? Who can be saved? And they themselves will begin to create the heaven-like state. So that when the rest began to filter right back into this place, we'll enter into a heaven-like state in which the earth will be renewed. Earth will be renewed. That's deep. So what am I saying? I just want to run that scenario past again, because that's what I keep seeing, and because I got some words to go with what I'm seeing, is that we've come so far now that it's no turning around, that the earth will go into the cleansing and renewal process. And there are specific people that have the heads up on what is going to occur. They themselves are the ones that quickened the process. Now, our current course of action, our current course to our reality will bring about a hell-like state, straight up hell-like state in this world. So, and like I said, there's multiple things going on. One is that we're headed to this hell-like state in this world. But there is this possible salvation that happens. And the salvation that happens is based on humanity, you know, pushing Earth to its extreme where it is forced to quicken itself and to go through the renewal process. Those that know what's going on are the ones that are in the shelters and things like that, and have made provisions in order to survive this transition. And so the depopulation takes place, and those that are able to hide away are able to survive, and it's their bloodlines and genes that continue in this world. But it stops us. See, that's what it does. It stops us from heading to that hell-like place. And it opens up an opportunity for things to begin anew again, a whole new cycle in this physical realm, whole new cycle. And then it opens up the potential for that's deep, cheating on the behalf of the people. That's a whole lot. And it opens up a cycle for us to choose what do we want in this earth, heaven or hell. It's like a rewind, but that rewind costs a lot, and the cost is all that died, the depopulation, those people, you know, in humanity that die as a result of the works of man, die off. Some are saved, and they are the ones that are responsible for the future generations and their beliefs and philosophies. And, you know, that's deep. That's deep. And it's interesting. I have to put race here too, because a lot of the majority, I believe, now this is something that I don't know 100% to be true, is that the majority are Caucasian or something like that, that do a lot of doomsday prepping, and therefore would be the ones that perpetuate their bloodlines and genetics into the future. You know, so that plays a lot into going back into world domination. See, it was this, and if you follow me, I've talked a lot about world domination. I talked about it in the video where I talked about your ass is grass to the world's greatest pyramid scheme. I talked about the concept, I'll say, of world domination in my spiritual warfare series that 3 parts. And what the heck is flying in here now? Let me see if I can catch it. I'm telling you, I don't understand how everything just get in this house. I don't even know. What is that? I don't know what that is. What the hell is it? Oh. All right. I apologize. So what it really does, it does come back. It keeps coming back to world domination by a particular race. Can't get around that one. You know, it's a lot I would like to talk about, but it's so detailed, and it's so much. It's so much, and this is so interesting because I just don't understand existing and not being quite clear about what's taking place. I say that because if we are spiritual, eternal spiritual beings just coming in and out of physicality, that is who we are and what we are and where we originate from or how we're made, for that purpose and purpose alone, then what sense does it make for there to be, racial concerns? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Because if we are going to reincarnate in, then we will reincarnate into whatever vessel exists at any given time. You know how they talk about, when I say they, I'm talking about, what's it, anthropologists or something like that. People that talk, historically, I can't even think of what it is. Is it anthropologists? I don't know. But how at one time there were only like sea creatures. So when we reincarnated into sea creatures. Or then there came the dinosaurs. When we reincarnated, we were in dinosaurs. Or whatever existed at any given time. Then here we have this evolution into this human form, or this human form was created, and then we incarnated into it. And so race doesn't make any sense to me. A racially motivated ciphering doesn't make any sense to me. But then again, we have forgotten who we are and where we come from and our purpose of even existing. Anyway, I know I'm rambling now. I just felt like talking. Y'all. This is an Aquarius rant for October 2018. Just wanted to share a little bit of information with you. Share that portion about the doomsday prepping and why it exists and what has brought on the trend. And why did I do it is because I am actually writing another fear-based script or storyline to share with you for the month of October. And they were, the subject matters were bleeding in together. So I thought I would get this one out of the way in order to be able to have a smoother flow when I talk about or present the real horror story. Thank you for coming here to Can Angels Fly. Until next time, bye.